What happens when power meets humility most unexpectedly? Alexander Reed, a wealthy and arrogant tech CEO, thought he could do anything without consequences. But one rash decision in a crowded restaurant changed his life forever. Alexander wasn't just rich. He was the kind of wealthy that made people stand at attention when he walked into a room. His tech empire was a global success, but his attitude? Cold, dismissive, and unapologetically entitled. That evening, Alexander sat at a table in a high-end restaurant, surrounded by business associates. His sharp suit and the way he barked orders at the staff made it clear he thought he was untouchable. On the other side of this story was Amara Benson. She wasn't just another waitress. Amara had big dreams. A recent graduate from culinary school, she was working there as part of a deal with her father, Samuel Benson, a billionaire investor. Her father believed success wasn't just about owning a restaurant. It was about understanding the people who worked there. Amara had agreed to serve for 6 months to learn the ropes before opening her own place. She carried herself with grace, even in the face of demanding customers. But that night, fate took a harsh turn. As Amara approached Alexander's table with a tray of wine glasses, the unthinkable happened. The tray tipped, and crimson wine splashed across Alexander's pristine white suit. The room froze. Amara gasped, her eyes wide with shock. She quickly began apologizing, her hands trembling as she tried to clean the mess. But Alexander didn't care. His face twisted in anger as he stood up. Then it happened. His hand struck her cheek, silencing the restaurant. Gasps echoed around the room, and every head turned toward the scene. Some guests reached for their phones, recording the shocking moment. Amara didn't lash out. She stood there, her face red from both the slap and the humiliation. Her dignity remained intact, but the sting of what had just happened hung heavy in the air. The footage of the incident spread like wildfire on social media. A diner sitting near the scene had captured everything. The spilled wine, Alexander's furious outburst, and the loud, resounding slap that followed. The video, less than a minute long, was uploaded with the caption, "Millionaire CEO slaps waitress for a mistake, absolutely disgusting behavior." By the time the sun rose the next day, the video had millions of views and thousands of comments. The hashtag Boycott Alexander Global trended worldwide. People across all platforms expressed their outrage at Alexander's behavior, labeling him as entitled and heartless. The footage painted a clear picture of his arrogance, and the public had no tolerance for it. While Alexander faced a tidal wave of criticism, Amara became the unexpected center of attention. Social media users praised her composure during the incident, calling her graceful under fire. Amara, visibly shaken in the video, had managed to maintain her dignity, walking away without a single word of retaliation. As the video gained traction, celebrities and influencers began weighing in. A-list actors, singers, and athletes reposted the video, demanding justice for Amara. Tweets like, "This is what unchecked privilege looks like," and "Respect is the least we owe each other. This is unacceptable," flooded timelines. Amara's quiet strength resonated with people everywhere, turning her into a symbol of resilience and dignity. Some users went further, starting online campaigns to support Amara. A GoFundMe page titled "Help Amara Start Her Dream Restaurant" raised tens of thousands of dollars within days. Strangers from around the world left messages of encouragement, praising her strength and promising to help her achieve her goals without knowing how powerful she was. The public backlash wasn't limited to words online. People began boycotting products and services from Alexander's company, Alexander Global Innovations, one of the largest tech firms in the world. Videos of people smashing Alexander's branded electronics went viral, while others encouraged consumers to cancel their subscriptions. Investors started pulling out. Major stakeholders released statements condemning Alexander's actions, citing that they no longer wanted to associate with his leadership. His company's stock prices nosedived, losing billions in value within days. Alexander initially tried to downplay the situation. His PR team released a short, impersonal statement calling the incident unfortunate and claiming it was being investigated internally. This only added fuel to the fire, as the public interpreted it as a refusal to take accountability. The anger grew louder, and the pressure mounted. Behind the scenes, Alexander struggled to control the damage. Meetings with his board turned into shouting matches, with directors demanding he issue a proper apology. Some partners outright threatened to terminate their contracts if he didn't act quickly. Still, Alexander's pride held him back. To him, issuing an apology felt like admitting defeat, a thought he couldn't stomach. But as the days passed and the outrage intensified, it became clear that ignoring the situation wasn't an option. The empire he had built brick by brick was crumbling, and his refusal to act was accelerating its fall. Alexander sat at the head of the long glass conference table, flanked by his team of advisors. The atmosphere in the room was tense, with reports and financial projections scattered across the table. The company's stock was dropping like a stone, and news of the restaurant incident had gone viral. It was no longer just a PR problem, it was a full-blown crisis. One of the senior advisors, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia, cleared her throat and broke the silence. "Alexander, there's something you need to know." Her tone was serious, and even Alexander, who was usually dismissive of anyone else's concerns, sat up a little straighter. Patricia slid a file across the table. "This is about Amara Benson, the waitress from the restaurant incident." Alexander frowned, his irritation barely masked. "What about her? She's just a waitress." The room fell silent. Alexander's brow furrowed, the name taking a moment to register. Then it hit him like a freight train. "Samuel Benson," he repeated, his voice faltering. "The Samuel Benson? The billionaire investor?" Patricia nodded. "Yes, the same. His investment firm holds a substantial stake in our company, nearly 30% of our capital funding. If he pulls his investment, it could collapse everything we've built." The weight of her words settled heavily on Alexander. His once confident demeanor cracked, revealing a flicker of genuine fear. He leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. Why would someone like her be working as a waitress? Another advisor chimed in. "Apparently, it's part of an agreement she has with her father. She's learning the restaurant business from the ground up before opening her own place." Patricia's gaze hardened. "She's not just a waitress. She's the daughter of Samuel Benson." Alexander felt a cold sweat break out on his forehead. This wasn't just bad, it was catastrophic. Alexander shot up from his chair, pacing back and forth. "We need to fix this now. Get Benson on the phone. I'll apologize. I'll do whatever it takes." Patricia exchanged a look with the other advisors. "We've already tried reaching out," she said carefully. "He's not taking your calls." The color drained from Alexander's face. Samuel Benson wasn't just any investor. He was one of the most influential figures in the business world. His name alone could make or break a company. If Samuel Benson decided to pull his investment, other backers would follow suit like dominoes falling. "What are we hearing from his camp?" Alexander demanded, his voice rising in desperation. One of the younger advisors hesitated before answering. "Rumors are circulating that he's considering withdrawing. He hasn't made an official statement yet, but it doesn't look good." Alexander slammed his fist on the table. "This can't be happening. One mistake, one slap, and now my entire empire is on the line." Patricia spoke again, her voice calm but firm. "It's not just the slap, Alexander. It's your attitude. People are tired of arrogance like yours. This is about how you treat people, and now it's come back to bite you." Alexander's mind raced as he considered the implications. The idea of losing everything he had worked for was unbearable. He wasn't just losing money. He was losing power, influence, and the respect he had spent years building. "We need to stop him from pulling out," Alexander said, his voice quieter but no less urgent. I don't care what it takes. Get me in front of him." Patricia shook her head. "It's not that simple. Benson is known for being principled. If you want his forgiveness, it's going to take more than a phone call." Desperate and stripped of his usual arrogance, Alexander, the once powerful CEO, found himself standing at the towering gates of Samuel Benson's sprawling estate. The sheer size of the mansion was intimidating, even to a man of Alexander's wealth. The walls seemed to stretch endlessly, as though designed to keep out men exactly like him. He hadn't been invited. He knew this was a gamble, but his desperation outweighed his pride. The guard at the gate barely spared him a glance as Alexander introduced himself, his voice trembling slightly, a stark contrast to his usual commanding tone. "Mr. Benson doesn't take unscheduled visits," the guard said flatly. "Please just tell him I'm here." "I'll wait as long as it takes," Alexander replied, trying to keep his composure. And wait he did. As the sun moved across the sky, Alexander sat in his car, checking his phone obsessively for updates or messages. None came. The biting irony was not lost on him. He had kept others waiting like this countless times in his life. Now, the tables had turned. By the time the guard waved him through, the sky had dimmed, and Alexander's nerves were shot. He was ushered into the vast living room, where the ceilings seemed to scrape the heavens. The opulence of Samuel's estate made Alexander's own mansion look modest in comparison. Samuel sat in an armchair, his presence commanding without effort. Beside him was Amara, whose calm demeanor only magnified Alexander's discomfort. Her eyes met his briefly, and the look of quiet disappointment stung more than any harsh words could have. The moment Alexander stepped into the room, the weight of his actions crushed him. He dropped to his knees, the sharp sound of them hitting the marble floor echoing in the massive space. His voice cracked as he spoke. "Mr. Benson, Amara, I'm so sorry," he began, looking between the two. "I was arrogant, thoughtless, and cruel. What I did was unforgivable." Amara remained silent, her expression unreadable. Samuel leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. Alexander continued, his words pouring out like a broken dam. "I've spent my entire life thinking I was above everyone else, that money gave me the right to treat people however I wanted. But I see now how wrong I was. I hurt you, Amara, and I hurt myself by being that kind of person. Please forgive me." Samuel didn't speak immediately. The silence stretched, heavy and oppressive. Then he leaned forward, his piercing gaze locking onto Alexander. "Do you truly understand what you've done?" Samuel asked, his voice calm but laced with authority. "Or are you here because you're afraid of what I could do to your company?" Alexander flinched at the bluntness of the question, but didn't look away. "I'm here because I'm ashamed of myself," he said. "And yes, I'm afraid of losing everything. But more than that, I'm afraid of staying the man I was when I slapped your daughter. I don't want to be him anymore." Amara finally spoke, her voice steady but firm. "Do you have any idea how it felt to be humiliated like that? In front of everyone? You didn't just slap me, you stripped me of my dignity." Her words hit Alexander like a physical blow. He lowered his head, unable to meet her gaze. "I know I can't undo what I've done, Amara," he said. "But I promise I'll do whatever it takes to make it right." Samuel let the words hang in the air before he spoke. "Making it right," he said slowly, "isn't about empty promises or words in this room. If you want my forgiveness and my continued investment, you'll have to prove you've changed." Alexander nodded eagerly, desperate for a chance. "I'll do anything." Samuel leaned back. "First, you'll issue a public apology. Not a carefully crafted PR statement. A real apology where you admit your faults and promise to treat everyone with the respect they deserve." Alexander swallowed hard but nodded again. "Second," Samuel continued, "you'll establish a scholarship fund for culinary students in honor of Amara. People like her deserve opportunities, not humiliation." Third, you'll create workplace initiatives to protect and uplift service workers, diversity training, anti-harassment policies. The works? Alexander hesitated for a brief moment, the weight of Samuel's demands sinking in. But then he nodded, his voice resolute. I'll do it all, whatever it takes. Samuel stared at him for a long moment, then stood. Then we'll see if you're a man of your word, Mr. Reed. As Alexander left the estate, the weight on his shoulders felt heavier than ever. But for the first time, he felt like he was carrying something worth bearing, the chance to be a better man. Alexander Reed, once the face of arrogance and privilege, now stood behind a podium in front of flashing cameras and a restless crowd. The large screen behind him displayed the words "an apology and a promise." His tailored suit couldn't hide the tension in his posture, and for the first time, his voice didn't carry its usual commanding tone. I am here today to address my actions that have caused pain and disappointment to so many. He began, his eyes scanning the room, his tone heavy with remorse. I let my anger and ego take control, and in doing so, I disrespected Amara Benson and service workers around the world. What I did was unacceptable, and for that, I am truly sorry. The room was silent, save for the sound of clicking cameras. For someone who had always spoken to assert dominance, Alexander's words now felt humble and sincere. He continued, I've spent the past weeks reflecting on my behavior, and I've realized that success means nothing without respect for the people who make that success possible. Today, I'm not just here to apologize. I'm here to act. Alexander then announced a series of company initiatives: improved employee welfare policies, a minimum wage increase, extended health benefits, and better working conditions for all his employees. Service Worker Support Fund, a $10 million donation to organizations supporting hospitality and service industry workers, including scholarships for culinary students like Amara once was. Mandatory respect training, company-wide training programs to ensure all employees, from entry-level to executives, understood the value of dignity and respect. I promise to rebuild trust, not just with my employees, but with everyone I've let down, he concluded. The sincerity in his voice hinted at a man desperate to prove he had changed. While Alexander worked to regain his footing, Amara's life was taking a brighter turn. Buoyed by public support and her father's financial backing, she opened her dream restaurant, Amara's Table. Located in the heart of the city, Amara's Table was a warm, inviting space that combined modern aesthetics with touches of her cultural heritage. The menu showcased her passion for culinary arts, offering dishes that told stories, her story. Opening day was a spectacle. Lines stretched down the street, filled with people eager to support the woman who had become a symbol of resilience. Media outlets covered the event, praising Amara for her grace under pressure and her ability to rise above adversity. With her father, Samuel Benson, as her quiet yet steady guide, Amara proved she had what it took to run a successful business. Her restaurant didn't just thrive. It became a movement, inspiring other service workers to dream bigger and aim higher. Alexander, now a man of humility, became one of Amara's biggest supporters. He frequently visited her restaurant, not as the wealthy CEO, but as a patron who had learned to appreciate the work behind every plate of food. On one visit, he asked to speak with her privately. Amara, he said, his voice steady but softer than before, I know I can never undo what I did, but I want you to know I admire what you've built. You didn't just forgive me, you inspired me to change. Amara smiled, her eyes reflecting a mix of forgiveness and understanding. What matters is that you've chosen to be better, Alexander. It's not an easy thing to do. Alexander didn't just stop at words. Over the following months, he used his resources to promote Amara's Table and advocate for better treatment of service workers in other industries. He funded projects that provided career development for waitstaff and cooks, ensuring others had the opportunities he once tried to take from Amara. Alexander's journey from arrogance to humility became a widely discussed topic. his public fall from grace, and subsequent efforts to make amends set an example of accountability. Though his reputation took years to rebuild, he emerged as a more compassionate leader. For Amara, the incident became a turning point that pushed her to achieve greatness. Her restaurant, a beacon of empowerment, stood as a reminder that strength, dignity, and resilience can overcome even the toughest challenges. Samuel Benson's calculated decision to hold Alexander accountable not only taught him a valuable lesson, but also set a precedent for others in positions of power. Respect, as Samuel often said, isn't optional, it's essential.